Welcome to sports, I'm Chris Will. Florida football has officially secured bowl eligibility after a big win over South Carolina on Saturday.
LeBron James, a shot at history, and LeBron stands alone!
The record has been broken and the king has been crowned. You just heard what it sounded like in Los Angeles as LeBron James became the all-time points leader of the NBA. Welcome to sports, I'm Chris Will. Well, the NFL season is just weeks away, and that hasn't stopped one Martin County native, an NFL vet, from hitting the field, this time giving back to the community he grew up in. Jumping straight to the fourth quarter, Buffalo driving down by 2, quarterback Josh Allen escapes the sack, gets it to wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie in the middle of the field, but he's unable to make it to the sideline to stop the clock, and with no timeouts remaining, Buffalo has to watch in agony as the time runs all the way down to 0. Dolphins escape 21-19. The U.S. Open entered day 2 of competition today in Brookline, Massachusetts. Phil Mickelson will miss the cut, though, after finishing the day at plus 11, but there was plenty of movement on the leaderboard. And on the men's side, Gators basketball took down Georgia last night. The rivalry win put former Florida head coach Mike White at 0-2 against the Gators this season. Sophomore transfer Will Richard had quite the day for the Gators, a career-high 24 points. That included 5 threes, got Richard and the Gators a much-needed 77-67 win against their SEC foe.
Well, Jensen, the only guarantee I have for tonight's game is that basketball will be played on the court behind me, but Colin Castleton won't be a part of it for the Gators. When these two teams met just 2.5 weeks ago, Colin Castleton put together a game-high 25 points, and they'll be looking to bring that to the homecoming game. And speaking of homecoming and that noon kickoff, Mr. Two Bits will be Florida Gator great Chandler Parsons. Back to you guys.
And for Florida fans dying for some more college football, mark your calendars for 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, April 13th. That's when Florida will kick off their spring game. Florida will soon be the sole program in the national spotlight on that day. Miami is scheduled for the 14th, with Ohio State, Clemson, FSU, and Georgia competing on the 15th. But if you want to see some former Gators in action, the NFL Combine kicks off tomorrow. Johnson has been on a tear for the Wildcats. In the opening minute of this one, he puts it into the stands on the defensive end and makes his presence felt at the end of the half to put Kansas State up by 5. Johnson would put this one away with a massive overtime lob. Kansas State would go wild, and the Wildcats knock off number 2 Kansas. The college football transfer portal comes to a close today, and Florida football has had their fair share of departures, but have also had a few big wins in the closing weeks. But let's start with what Florida will need to fill. The Gators will be forced to replace production on nearly every phase of the game. Yeah, certainly a team that's rewriting the history books, and they aren't the only ones in the state of Florida. One football player here at the University of Florida is quite literally cementing himself in history. We'll show you who it is and what the ceremony looked like when we return. Stay tuned.
The Florida-Georgia game.
Right, Georgia, Florida.
Why am I here? Well, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
Whatever you want to call it.
It's an annual tradition.
Until you experience it, there's nothing you can say for it.
It's one of the most treasured rivalries in all of college football.
Playing for Spurrier, I'm going to tell you.
Yes, that one. The head ball coach, Steve Spurrier.
There's not a game he wanted to win more than the Georgia game.
Corey Yarborough was part of the 1996 national championship team. The former offensive lineman went 4-1 against Georgia in his career, and as a Jacksonville area native, he knows the matchup all too well.
Man, I remember as a kid that we would work in the stadium and volunteer with Boy Scouts.
Starting from the age of 8.
So we would sell drinks in the stadium, like the sodas and stuff.
But the atmosphere surrounding the game goes well beyond the stadium walls. And encapsulates itself in RV City.
We get here very early, and most of these people have been here since Tuesday night.
For a 3:30 game on Saturday.
Partying and all of that. And it's just everyone wants to have a good time, and everyone wants their team to win.
Southern Soul, colorful cornhole, and of course rows of RVs scattered la-e near TIAA Bank Field.
It provides everything you need. I've got all the creature comforts of home. I call this my condo on wheels.
It's all a part of the festivities that have kept people like Yarborough coming back to the annual matchup. He says he's only missed 3 games in the last 35 years. Now, the tradition, rivalry, and hoopla are a way to keep family memories alive.
I came with my parents, my mom passed away last year and my dad the year before. So a lot of significance here. A lot of good times.
And despite the intensity of the rivalry, RV City, Alligator Alley, and the world's largest outdoor cocktail party are like a new family for Yarborough, even if they don't always get along.
Well, you see each other every year. So it's like that, you're getting together with the cousins you love but you hate also. Okay, it's a love-hate.
And as fans descend upon the stadium for the 100th meeting between the Bulldogs and the Gators, the party in Duval has just begun. A party over pigskin that turned extended family of orange and blue into a family blended with red and black. In Jacksonville, Chris Will, WUFT News.
Yeah, Jacob, the network to fight these crimes can be very extensive. On the front lines of fighting child porn, you'll find the ICAC teams. ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children, and there's one task force based right here in Gainesville with 60 more nationwide. If you take a close look, though, you'll see that they face an incredible challenge.
The Internet, always on, connecting me with you and millions of others.
We are always operating 2 steps behind because of the way that the internet works.
Crimes happening behind closed doors, buried in the depths of the World Wide Web.
We rely upon parents, kids, and these companies, the tech companies themselves, to monitor and report things that they become concerned about.
A watchful eye, a helpful tip. A catalyst that uncovers possible wrongdoing investigated by these men and women. The Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
So our focus is preventing and investigating the online exploitation of children.
But the internet is global.
I think the biggest thing is people need to realize it happens everywhere in every community.
Which makes catching these criminals even harder.
The issues of child exploitation online are only growing, and they're probably only, unfortunately, going to get worse.
Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, better known as ICAC, fights internet-based crimes with the National Network of Law Enforcement Agencies. Of the 61 federally funded units spread across the United States, Gainesville serves as the headquarters for North Florida.
And the extent of that network stretches from big tech companies all the way to local police departments. For example, a social media giant like Facebook receives a report about an image on its platform. It would then send that tip to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They then look into the case to see where the individual or group might reside. And if the crime does occur in North Florida, the contact is the ICAC headquarters at GPD. Investigators like Christopher King then determine the proper county and contact the specific department to assign them the case. Cases like the one of Jalen Kitna.
The 19-year-old's arrest came after a Discord account believed to belong to the former University of Florida quarterback was flagged by the online platform.
It used to be years ago that there was the stranger danger concern, and it's the creepy-looking van that drives by in the neighborhood. When actuality is that your child has a much and far greater chance of being exploited online than anything happening in person.
A statement from the Gainesville Police Department revealed that Kitna believed the images to be legal and that his Discord account was deactivated. It's the latest in an alarming trend for ICAC in North Central Florida. After receiving just under 2,000 tips in 2017, that number has quadrupled in just 5 years, totaling nearly 8,000 tips in 2022.
If you wanted to list 5 sites that you're familiar with, I could probably tell you that we've received cyber tips from those providers.
With the bulk of investigations being under what King calls the age-questionable range.
The unfortunate reality is a lot of our actionable investigations tend to be prepubescent children. So I kind of want the public to understand that part of it, because oftentimes I think some of these investigations get kind of pushed off to the side and not looked at seriously because they think it's maybe a 16, 17-year-old who's communicating with an 18, 19-year-old.
To help build and bolster the network that deals with these cases, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement hosted the Crimes Against Children Conference in Orlando. With over 800 attendees from across the globe, law enforcement agents, lawyers, judges, and mental health experts had the chance to learn and meet with those involved in the fight against child exploitation.
The internet is not unique to a certain city or county, it's global. And this kind of training like this brings agencies from across the world here to learn the same material, to meet each other and become a much larger network to fight this crime.
It's a fight to bridge the gap between the dark depths of the internet and law enforcement.
It used to be, 15, 20 years ago, maybe a little bit even longer ago, we had to get out of our house to actually have contact with a stranger. But nowadays, you can pick up the phone in your pocket right now and have access to thousands of people and millions of people throughout the world.
In 2022, Gainesville police completed 96 total investigations of child exploitation. That number includes 17 arrests from 327 subpoenas and 105 search warrants. As for Kitna, he is currently home in Texas with his family after posting bail. King and his team will still be responsible for the processing of evidence, but the case now turns to the state attorney's office.